Okay, thank you everybody for joining us today. We have Chloe Ellis with us. Chloe is a experienced RBC group consultant with a demonstrated history of working in the banking industry, skilled in coaching, sales, event management, and fundraising. Chloe is an experienced public speaker who shares her passion for effective communications to empower women and future generations. She passionately supports her community and served on the executive board as treasurer and charter member for the Seroptimist International of New Westminster, Burnaby. She also enjoys the Leaders of Tomorrow through the UBC Blossom, enjoys mentoring the Leaders of Tomorrow through the UBC Blossom Mentorship Program and the Burnaby Board of the Trade Access Program. Excuse me. So without further ado, Chloe, I will pass things off to you to get us started today.
Fantastic, Erin. Well, thank you so much for that introduction and for having me here. I'm presenting from my wonderful home office, as I'm sure many of you on the call are doing. If you're fortunate to be in a hybrid office, congratulations. I'm in beautiful, rainy British Columbia out in Vancouver right now. So I appreciate that wherever you are across Canada, whether you're in Brandon, Manitoba or whereabouts, welcome, welcome, welcome. We are thrilled to be on this roughly 60-minute journey with you today in regards to how we can really craft that powerful communication to be able to help you not only as business leaders, but with your professional development, with your employees, and with your clients. And this journey has been something that I've been on professionally for the last 12 years, working with executives, working with our community partners to try to find a presentation that can really speak to the heart of who we are as a presenter and who do we want to evolve into. So without further ado, we'll get started. I know we're on Zoom today, and thank you all for battling any technological deficiencies that happened today. If you could see the studio around me, I'm on multiple screens. I have at least 4 in front of me to navigate with you today. So if you do have questions, please feel free to utilize the chat function in Zoom, and Erin's going to help me kind of navigate that too. I have it up on one of my screens here. There's also another option. If you want to submit questions anonymously, you can also put your name to them as well and vote on them to get to the top of the list. You can use slido.com, that's SLIDO.com, and enter the code 95554. That's 95554. And I'll be able to see those questions as they come up. I really want to make sure that you get the most out of this presentation, learning through my experiences and myself, hopefully learning through your experiences as well. So please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation, and I'll pause periodically if we do get a lot, just to make sure that, again, we're really making sure we're addressing exactly what it is that you want to hear today. So moving forward, what are the things that we're going to be delving into today? And the topic of talk so they listen. I was working with quite a few community leaders, and they say, well, Chloe, it's all about the audience. So why would we talk so they listen? And I say, well, it's not like the title of the presentation was, I'm talking, so listen to me. That's not the case whatsoever. The biggest piece in the title is the them, which is the audience. So we want to be able to find a way through our journey today of how we can address ourselves, how we can address our message, and how we can actually address our audience as well and really get to the root of what it is we're trying to say. And as presenters, I'm going to use the term presenters and storytellers interchangeably because we all have a story to tell, whether it's at a business meeting, whether it's on a webinar like you and I are here today, whether you're doing a speech at your sister's wedding, or an elevator pitch to one of your potentially future leaders. There's many different ways that we present ourselves. And one of the biggest pieces that I've been delving into with some of our fellow sociopsychologists at local universities has been around the biases and baggage that we bring to our presentations. That also goes deeper into, do we bring that back to the dinner table? Are we bringing that into our offices? Are we understanding how we can delineate between our hybrid offices now? It's quite a large psychological piece, so we'll definitely delve into that. A personal favorite of mine is going through the ticks and tells. And in a nutshell, that's a way to be able to identify if a presenter is in the moment with you or if they're elsewhere. And we'll go through some of the biggest culprits that I see when I'm coaching presentation skills. But don't worry, most of them are highly correctable and really not that bad. So going through messaging. I've written many speeches for myself, for executives over the years, and really trying to find that intention, what it is you're really trying to say, and not splicing or mincing words, and also the design. So, how we're crafting it and how we're delivering it. And the last, but absolutely not least, save the best for last, is the audience. Who is with us? What space are we in? And especially in our hybrid offices, what is that going to look like? And what are some of the activities and routines that we can do to be successful? So the first thing I'd like you to do is think of a presenter that spoke to you. And I don't just mean the words that they said, but something that they did that really resonated with you. Was it the way that they held themselves? Was it what they were wearing? Was it their message? Was it inspirational? Does everybody get a car? What was it that really, really made you focus in on these individuals? Are they leaders? Are they comedians? Are they talk show hosts? Are they interventionists? What are they, and what is their message that's really speaking to you? So everyone kind of think of that one thing in your head. Let's call that a strength, an attainable strength. Now think to one of your recent presentations. It could have been, again, a conversation at the dinner table. It could have been a meeting earlier in the day today with a colleague or a client. And try to think if you were able to utilize that strength that you just found in one of these presenters. And be honest with yourself and say, okay, let's say I really appreciate that Hassan Minhaj, who's a fantastic comedian and speaker, I really appreciate that he's very poignant and really uses his voice. Okay, well, in my meetings today with my clients, was I able to utilize some of those attributes that I find valuable? And oftentimes, if we're honest with ourselves, we'll think back and go, you know what? I probably could have been a little bit more higher energy. I probably could have not thought that my children are running around 4 feet from my French doors and that I should have been focusing on what I'm doing. But please know that that is not a slag on your ability to perform whatsoever. We are human. And we will fail, and we will fail, and we will succeed, and we will fail again, and we will succeed. And we know that the highest performers across the board, whether it's from athletics, politics, media, whatever, they are the ones that the most successful are the ones who've likely failed the most throughout their careers. And I can tell you just from me being a public speaker, man, I've had some bad experiences. But the most important thing that we'll continue to go throughout the presentation today, rather, is not necessarily dwelling on our failures, but taking the time to explore that failure and say, what made it happen? Why did I let it happen? Was it something out of my control? And spending that hard time in the failure, so we're not just running through it and ignoring what we just did, which although sometimes can be a reasonable strategy, which we'll talk about some of that as well. So that key strength that you've identified in one of your favorite presenters, kind of keep that in mind as we continue to roll through this presentation. The biggest fear in the world, and there are some studies that go against this and most that actually are comfortable with this summation, is that the number one fear in the world is public speaking. People would rather go to the dentist, get a root canal, eat spiders, you name it, than actually have to get up and public speak in a strange environment. And that really comes from the deep down, I would say, the fight or flight response almost. And every time I meet with someone who's like, what am I supposed to do to be able to help get better as a presenter? I say, we need to conquer one thing and one thing alone. And that's your fear monster. It is always there. Sometimes it's there in full force. Sometimes your little monster is small. Sometimes the fear monster is very, very big and can fill a room to the point that it pushes you out as a presenter. You have the power to decide where your fear monster goes when you're presenting. And there's a few techniques that you can use. One of which is a visualization technique that I learned early on in my career. And it was try to imagine what your fear monster looks like. Okay, and bear with me here. I hope there's some creative types on the call. Try to imagine what that fear monster looks like. And then what I want you to do is I want you to shrink it down to about pocket size. About pocket size, maybe smaller than your cell phone. And in your mind, I want you to visually take a really nice box. And I want you to put your fear monster in that box and close that lid. Okay? Your fear monster's now, although with you, it's delineated space. What I want you to do is, in your mind, place that fear monster outside the auditorium, place it outside your office, place it outside your meeting space, and try to forget about it. But just know that that fear now has the potential to be contained and that you are in control of your presentation. Sometimes just going through the visualization of saying my fear is big, now small, now it's in a delineated space. I can choose to pick it up later on my way out, or I can just leave it there. It'll find you later. Don't worry. It always follows you like a shadow eventually. But at least utilizing a technique like this gives you a little bit more that sense of control, so that all of the amazing activities and routines that you've done to prepare for your presentation, that's what gets to shine through. You push your fear monster out, it does not push you out of that room. Okay? Remember that, because I use it every day. And also on the concept of being able to kind of package up something that's an issue for us, along with our fear monster. I like to leave my bag of biases and just my general baggage outside. And humans are very unique in this capability. What comes with our critical thinking, what comes with our ability to have higher learning, ability to cook food, no other animals in the kingdom do that, our ability to bring our baggage with us over time. So I mean, everything that we bring with us through the day, that we have a hard time leaving at the door, emotions, stress of the marriage, childhood trauma. My sister was mean to me last week. So many things that we bring with us often have a tendency to steal our focus, our power, and our energy. So if you kind of think of all the things, and we're not going to go into a negative aspect here, it's just more of an awareness piece. But when we think of the baggage that we bring with us, that also has to deal with some of that transforms it into our biases. So let's say we've had a presentation, we're presenting to tech-savvy millennials. And let's say your experience with millennials has been generally a negative one. Let's say you've experienced a lack of focus. You've experienced a lack of discipline or even perhaps respect. That's not painting everybody in that demographic with the same brush, but that's been your experience. So let's say we didn't practice that mindfulness of leaving that at the door. And now you're in a situation where you get to be the storyteller to this very demographic. What do you think might happen in your presentation? Your baggage that you brought right with you and is sitting right next to you on stage is starting to seep out. There's some not good stuff that's coming into your presentation or has the potential to do so. More importantly, that baggage that you bring with you, those kind of those negativities, some of those thoughts that tend to creep in, that is literally what you're saying is your brand. You're saying, this is what I am bringing with me. This is my brand. And that can also be a very challenging thing for us to overcome as presenters, is not only are we trying to communicate effectively with our audience, we're trying to get clues from them as to how the presentation is going. Is this making sense? Now this is stealing focus. So I highly, highly recommend that although we are not ever going to forget our past experiences whatsoever, just like we try to do on a daily basis when we leave our work at work instead of bringing it home. And when we don't bring our baggage into our home or into our offices, leave that outside next to your fear monster. What I do want you to bring in with you is your basket of joy. Now, happiness is a lifelong journey. I'm learning, but there are moments of joy that can happen. So everything that you've done, that you've accomplished, your positive successes, put in that little basket. And then you carry that with you. So it could be, instead of wearing medals around your neck saying, I'm great, I'm the best person in the room, you can bring this basket of joy. And what that's going to do is, now that you're thinking about something positive, certain cognitive biases are going to go by the wayside. You're now going to stop necessarily assuming about the audience, and you're going to try to start seeing them in the lens of the 90%. I recently had the opportunity to see an amazing speaker, the author of the book, The Successes of 90%. And she was speaking around how we can try to focus and see people through this lens of their successes instead of being bogged down in that additional 10%. And I challenge you to try to see people through that lens, see yourself through that lens, because the judgment that often comes from those internal biases are going to slowly fall away. They're still going to be there, essentially, but at least they're not going to have a substantial impact on your presentation. I would say some of the other biases that I've seen, the real detrimental ones are that, okay, my last presentation was garbage. It was the worst thing ever. Now my fear monster's back and everything starts to pile in, and now it's everything. Now your bag is open of baggage and everything's seeping out, and things can get out of hand pretty quickly. Don't tank your presentation because of emotions. Easier said than done, absolutely. But just know that you are the steward of your success. Okay, judgment, self-awareness, both go hand in hand to a certain degree. And it was the Harvard Business Review that said, a lot of our biases are coming out of our internal and external awareness. So how aware are you about, and I always challenge myself too, and these are practices that I employ on a daily basis with all of my presentations. I say, how self-aware am I today? How aware am I of everyone else? And by outer awareness, it's people's reactions. It's going to be your physical space around you. How is that affecting me today? And then the internal part, obviously, is how am I being affected? What are my emotions? And a little bit later in the presentation, we're going to speak about some routines and rituals that you can get into that work specifically for you to be able to help avoid some of these things and get you into the right headspace. I'm a firm believer that being a good presenter, which every single person on this call today is and can be, and we can all evolve into something greater, is our ability to believe in ourselves. And I know it sounds so simple and it's so hard to do sometimes, but trust me, that self-awareness piece is going to be one of the foundational building blocks of getting you to be your best presenter and best storyteller. To pivot slightly, tics and tells are actually the physical manifestation of some of our biases or some of our baggage that we're bringing in. And the one that I want to highlight is really, are we in the moment? And think back through all of the presentations that you've seen, whether you were in school, which is one of my favorite ones when I go in and teach presentation skills classes, or even when we're in a very senior business meeting and you look around the room and you can see what everybody's doing. My favorite one is the dancing. Once I tell you that a lot of the presenters that you see are actually dancing in front of you, it's going to be hard to unsee. So think back to a presentation and just think if someone was kind of shifting their feet back and forth. Was anybody shifting their feet? Did they start to actually cross their legs as they're presenting? That is one of the biggest tells that someone is uncomfortable or someone has kind of lost focus. Okay, so I highly encourage you to present in front of a mirror, record yourself so that we can make sure that you're aware of what your tricks and tells are so that people aren't stealing the focus from you, okay? More importantly, you're not stealing the focus from yourself. So avoid the dancing if you can. Another really big one too that I do really want to highlight, it's a personal pet peeve of mine, and I try to correct it every time I see it in the 90%, obviously, is don't lean on something. Don't try not to do that. If you're ever presenting in a group setting and you see someone start to, let's say there's 4 people presenting, 2 people are doing the presentation and 2 people are kind of the superfluous advisors. Make sure that everybody is really there together, focused, looking at the presenter, giving them their energy instead of trying to pull it away. Because if you have 3 out of the 4 people paying attention and 1 person isn't, you just lost at least 50% of your audience. So when you are doing your rehearsals, when you are as a team, just ask everybody to really be committed, because even if you're up there and you're not talking, you are absolutely presenting. And the way that you're standing, where you're looking is absolutely crucial. So just kind of be aware of that, depending on who you're presenting with. So this is a topic I often get questioned about, is to script or not to script. That is the question. And I'm working in speech writing for a long time and working in film and TV. It really depends on the situation. Okay, so don't necessarily beat yourself up if you do have a script and you're dedicated to it, or you like to go more freestyle. I would say, if you're doing a facilitation and you're very comfortable with the material, absolutely feel free to kind of riff, but make sure that you have your roadmap to success, which is usually your introduction comments, 3 bullet points, and then flesh out those bullet points with at least 3 more if you can, depending on what it is, and then have your summation at the end. Just like I have now, which I could probably show you on one of my many screens, is I don't have a teleprompter going. Although I've used them in the past, you know, if you're in the news or whatever, it can be very helpful if you're kind of going through something that needs to be more scripted. But in regards to a lot of the presentations we're doing now, I would say try to get comfortable with a few different lines throughout your path to success. And the reason why is because with your audience, sometimes you don't really know which piece of information is going to stick with who. So when you go through your path to success in your writing, it's also going to be able to help you address and discover different lines of questioning. And one of the greatest things about a presentation is one of 2 things. 1, you rock the house and there's no questions, or 2, you rock the house and there's lots of questions. So either or, at least going through your writing and kind of finding that kind of knowledge tree that can come out of it can be very, very helpful with you. Another piece of writing and presenting that is absolutely crucial with your message is finding your intention. And the word intention is really something that, you know, anybody that has been on the stage before, in theater, has done speech writing classes, will know that the words that you're writing have to correspond with the specific intention, which is like an action you are trying to portray to your audience. So let's say you're trying to inspire your audience in your storytelling. So you want to be able to try to find the words that match that, but also the tone of your voice. So what I like to do with when I go through my speeches, let's say I wrote a speech out, it's very scripted, I got all my paragraphs memorized, everything's good to go. Then you can go back through it and say, at this moment, during this sentence, this is how I'm trying to make the audience feel. This is how I want them to feel. Because the next time you read or you go through that script, now that's in the back of your head going, okay, I want my audience to feel, let's say, maybe a little bit scared if you're telling them a tragic story, or you want them to feel empowered. Having that in your mind, having that tool in your toolbox is not only going to shape your writing, shape the way you're able to communicate with your audience, but more importantly, enhance your communication skills. And I mean like the timbre of your voice, your register use, all of the good stuff that we know make a good presenter a great presenter. The last piece in regards to script writing is often people will say, well, if I wrote a script, do I have to stick to it? And the answer is no, you don't. You don't. You're in the driver's seat. Absolutely. You can play around with it. But there have been quite a few psychological studies that have come out of what happens when somebody writes a script. And I think it was Harvard Business Review again, which I love, highly encourage you to check it out. They said that what happens is that when someone gets dedicated to memorizing your script one way, that if anything happens during your presentation where now you forget it or you change one word, it kind of throws out the rest of the, or has the potential to throw out the rest of the presentation. So a technique I like to do to get over that, where again, memorization is super good, don't get me wrong, in great situations, but being able to work with a trusted advisor, it could be a family member, it could be a colleague, a friend. You want someone to be able to challenge you on your speech lines. What I mean by that is this activity, when you're going through your speech, you're going to have that other person say, well, why would you say it that way? Why would you do it that way? And they're going to disrupt you so often that eventually you're going to be able to power through your script, and it's going to be quite helpful. Don't get a friend that's overly aggressive, maybe on every single word that you're saying, but at least have somebody jump in and question you on it, because now you're creating new mnemonic thought patterns as well that are going to be able to help you during your presentation when you're live, that if you do forget something, you're like, I got this, I can go on to something else. So if we don't practice these techniques and we actually end up in these situations, it can be extremely challenging to try to pivot, when you're in front of your boss or you're in front of your clients, as I'm sure we've all experienced. So these are just some of the factors in regards to writing that have had an impact in my life over time. So if there's any questions in regards to speech writing, please feel free to jump in. The other thing too that has come up a lot is brain freeze. What do you do when you forgot your lines? And I'll be very honest, it happened to me. I was on stage during a play many moons ago, and I absolutely forgot my lines. Nothing was coming. I was like, I don't even know who I am right now. The audience is looking at me. My cast members were looking at me. And the best thing in the world happened during that moment of despair. And trust me, that moment felt like a million years. Is my cast member prompted my line. So he said, okay, well, whatever your character was, how do you feel about X, Y, and Z? Which prompted me to go, oh yes, that's what I'm supposed to be talking about, and getting everything back on track. The reason why I bring up this technique is to be able to help you save your cast members, for you to be able to save your co-presenters if something's going off the rails. It is a beautiful team building moment where you actually build fundamental trust with a co-presenter, with a colleague, when they're floundering and you're like, hey, absolutely, tell me about those new marketing numbers that we had in Q2. Weren't they up 12%? And the look of relief, everyone in the room, trust me, your audience is silently cheering like, yay. Because when it comes to your audience, the biggest thing I want you to take away today is that they want you to succeed. They want you to do well, okay? They don't want you to fail. Maybe there's that one person in the audience that's got a grudge. Don't focus on that person. That person is not there for the good reason. So don't worry about that. Your audience wants you to succeed every single time you get up there. And if you do forget your lines or something happens, they are desperately giving you positive energy for everything to get back on track. And sometimes when we use these mantras and we practice these thought routines of putting our monster in a box outside, of putting our baggage outside, of feeling the passion of the audience for wanting us to succeed, can already help tip us in a positive direction for our presentations. And there's one more example that we'll share as we're kind of getting into the overall kind of audience, is putting too much stock in one of your members. So let's say, again, we'll take the scenario where there's 4 people presenting, which can happen. It used to happen a lot more. Now it's all via Zoom, so we don't get to see everybody's beautiful faces. And I thank everyone for has their cameras on, so I feel like I'm not just presenting to a blank wall. I do appreciate that. But a technique that we've seen that can be successful, but often when it backfires, blows your whole presentation to heck and back. So let's say you have 4 very qualified colleagues. You happen to be one of them. Let's say you tend to be the presenter that's more comfortable presenting. What can happen is those 3 other, we'll call them colleagues, I'm going to call them cast members, but vice versa. Those 3 other members could say, okay, great, Erin, I'm going to have you present the whole thing. And you're like, I'll do that for my team. I can do that. My team tasked me to do this. I want to do this. I am equipped to do this. And let's say for whatever reason, 5 minutes before the presentation, through no fault of anybody, you're running to your presentation, it's a downpour, you forgot your umbrella, you spill your coffee, your fear monster's trying to get through the door, your baggage is seeping out, a whole bunch of stuff happens. Well, now, unfortunately, you as the key presenter are not in the right headspace. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes it's out of our control, but now your cast members, your colleagues are looking at you going, okay, great, this is it, you're gonna do it. And let's say you get up there and you can't do it. It just does not work. And your 3 other cast members are standing there going, well, okay, it was all on you. A way to help avoid that, understudy. If you do have to have one person that's going to be presenting everything, have somebody that's willing to jump in. But more importantly, it comes back to one of the first pieces we talked about today, and that's awareness. Not only is it important for us to kind of know where our fear monsters are, but it's important for us to be able to have at least enough camaraderie with our co-presenters, with our colleagues, to see that if they are going off the rails, if your presentation is going off the rails, that someone can have the courage to step in and go, you know what, it's a great time for question and answer. Or you know what, David here is going to take over and talk about those sales numbers. Take a few risks in your presentation. I mean, don't try to, we would say, steal focus or clown from one of your colleagues, but absolutely check in with them. And that's going to speak to some of the rituals and routines that you can do before your presentation to get you on track and in the right headspace. So in regards to audience, one of the biggest questions I get is, okay, what routine am I supposed to do to not be nervous? And that is an absolutely fantastic question. And the answer is it's different for everybody. I don't necessarily recommend anybody envisioning their audience in less than fully dressed, as I've been asked that one before. But a great thing that you can do if you have the opportunity, it depends on the venue, is get to know your audience beforehand. Okay. I know traditionally before, I would say March of 2020, it was, if you're in an auditorium setting, it was a little bit easier, even more of like a kind of a conference room setting. It was easy at first to kind of do the networking, get to know who's in the front row, get some names, get some industries, all that kind of fun stuff, just so that you're already building that human connection. Because that's really what a good presentation is finding some kind of human connection and really hoping and understanding that there's been some mutual learning. So if that can't happen, and we're all the Brady Bunch on a Zoom call, then a great thing to do is sign in 5 minutes early, do a little bit of chit chat, which can be good. But when that can't happen and you are presenting to a device, essentially, a great thing to do, again, is to just rely on the fact that the science proves that an audience wants you to succeed, okay, 99% of the time. So you can picture all the faces, whatever it is. You can picture your cat in front of you. You could picture, sometimes people will have, especially in this digital environment, they'll have like a little note or something, like a little picture that their child drew, or a Christmas card from their late mom, or something to kind of keep them focused and realizing that I'm speaking to humans right now. I cannot see all of you, but I know you are there and you are physically present where you are. And that's awesome. So try to do that visualization. It really can help, okay? One of the biggest questions I get is, oh my gosh, what happens when your audience is off track? What happens when they start talking between themselves? Well, great for people that experienced that in the past is you're on Zoom now and everybody's on mute. So you don't even know if they're off track. But I highly encourage you to use some techniques. Again, visualize that all of these individuals are in an audience setting, And if you really are concerned that your audience is off track, one of the craziest things, a surefire thing that a talker can do is stop talking. Take a very pregnant pause. People are like, oh, wait, was I asked a question? Is there something I should be doing? Is the presentation over? And their attention will snap back, even if just for a second. And at that opportunity, at that moment, you can take the opportunity to do a check-in with your audience and say something like, how's everybody feeling? Do we need to do a 5-minute dugout stretch? What is it? What do we need to do to get people's energy up? You know, we can start firing off some very voluntold questions into the audience. Or you can just continue on with your presentation. In my experience, I've done thousands of presentations, to be honest with you. And sometimes you get an audience member that doesn't want to be there. They want you to not succeed. They want you, they physically have to be there. And they're like, get out of here. And they start heckling. That is the worst, but also a great opportunity. So if you do find that there's an individual that is stealing focus from you in your presentation, and it can happen in a meeting when there's some guy in the back, some person in the back on the phone texting, you know, they got something else busy to do, you can invite them to leave very politely. I've used this a few times when, you know, it's just really not working out. So you can do that. That's one really good technique. You can say, you know what? I appreciate your time today. I invite you to go enjoy your time somewhere else, and then we'll all get back to this. 9 times out of 10, that person sits down and is just like, for the rest of the presentation. But sometimes at least it gives them the ability, because they want to be, usually it's stealing focus is about being noticed. So at least you're allowing them to be noticed and then being like, and here's your next action is that you can go. So feel, and just knowing, I would say that you have that tool in your presentation toolbox can oftentimes just give you the confidence and compassion to just kind of keep everybody engaged and in line. So that's definitely something that has worked in the past. If you're in a facilitation, so you're able to actually physically move around the room, a great thing that you can do is just go stand next to, well, not obviously now because we're, you know, in pandemic times, but back in the day, or hopefully in the future, you can go and stand next to the disruptor. People get very weirded out when the presenter walks into the audience and stands by somebody, because now where do you think the audience's attention is? On the person that was being a disruptor, and sometimes they don't want that. So at least that's a kind of a, not even passive aggressive, I would say it's just a passive way for you to be able to try to tell this person and let them know that they probably shouldn't be doing what it is that they're doing. So those are some techniques that can really help out. That brings me to another point is around spatial awareness. I'm sure we've all been in a presentation where there's a podium and for whatever reason, they put a 2 or 3 inch platform that you have to walk up. We've all seen it. It's been the trip, right? It happens. You can practice it 100 times. You can walk up and down the platform over and over and over again, but it's usually a platform under 4 inches is going to get everybody each time. So as the presenter, when you have the opportunity to be in a physical space, hopefully when that happens again in the future, you have the ability, obviously, walk your space, try to make it your own, get familiar with lines of sight. If you are someone that really likes to be by the podium, make sure you have all of your stuff that you need there, whether it's a Kleenex, water, your microphone, it could be like a little personal fan if it gets really hot, anything that's going to make you more comfortable. Whether or not you use it during the presentation it's really just to have it there to make you feel better. So feel free to be able to have some of these items around you to give you that confidence if you need them. I myself, outside of the line of sight here, have 2 laptops, 2 phones, 2 ring lights, a fan, a plethora of other digital things just in case technology fails. And the only way that we can get to understand what type of things that we need around us is by presenting in different situations. So I highly encourage you all to get out there, do some presenting, which I'm sure we all do on a daily basis. So what happens when the presentation doesn't go well? It is going to happen. It's absolutely going to happen. Try not to beat yourself up about it. Easier said than done. But as I mentioned earlier, if we want to be top performers, if we want to be at the very top of our fields, being the best business leaders that we can be, it's important to spend the time in the failure, trying to understand how it happened, why it happened, what I could control, what I can't control, and then try to adjust certain things for your success in the future, okay? Now, if you find that you've had multiple presentations that have been unsuccessful, sometimes it could just be the material that you're being asked to present. I know how riveting when we're doing quarterly sales numbers for some of our more dynamic marketing people. They're not necessarily thrilled about reading through all the numbers. And sometimes, to be honest, you can't jazz every presentation, okay? If your accountant is coming in and literally giving you some of these sales dollars, I do not expect a song and a dance along with those sales numbers. But you do have the ability to use certain techniques with your voice, your range, your timbre, those pauses that we were talking about to help kind of overcome some of the challenges that we can face when we're given a topic to present on that we may not be super jazzed about. So again, spend a little bit of time in the failure. And then one of my favorite things is then try to forget about it. Don't forget the learnings that you had. Okay, those are very positive things. That's focusing on the 90%. That is focusing on, the good stuff. But try not to remember. Try to forget, everything else essentially. Just like when you're cold calling in sales, a really bad one, we try to forget as much as we can. One of the biggest pieces for presentation skills is affirmations. Okay, it's about getting us in the right headspace, finding the right routines. And Maya Angelou, I think, nailed it. And for everyone on the call, in all of our presentations, I often try to ask people to reflect on what they did 5 minutes before the presentation, an hour before, the day before. What are some things that got you to your presentation for you to feel super empowered and successful? I have certain rituals and routines that I've been developing over, my entire professional career that I have to get in at least 5 minutes before to make sure that I'm at my best. But also because sometimes you're in a meeting and your boss is like, oh, great, now you're going to present everything. What is the 5-second mantra that you could do to get yourself in the game? And it was Dr. Ivan Joseph, who works in athletics. He said, actually, I think he did a TED Talk too. Everybody's done a TED Talk. We should talk about that, Erin. But one of the greatest things that I've learned from him is that highly successful people have affirmations. So they tell themselves 3 things, unabashedly braggy, just to themselves. Okay. So one of them could just be, I got this. I am awesome. This is going to work out. And tell yourself that internal monologue 5 seconds before your presentation, 5 minutes before your presentation. Get yourself in your positive space as best you can. And your positive affirmations can be short, they can be long, whatever it is specific to you. Try to find that internal positive narrative, because that strength is going to allow you to make sure that your fear monster and your baggage stays far enough away that you get to be the successful storyteller in your life. Absolutely critical. And a piece that I've been developing over a long time has been the idea that as a presenter, you are now at this moment, the most prepared for your next presentation than you've ever been. Because you have been practicing, unbeknownst to yourself, or maybe you do a lot of professional development. You've been practicing since the moment you were born on how to communicate. When we were children, maybe a little bit easier. We had the intention. We knew how to use enough words, hopefully, to get it. And then we tantrumed if we didn't get it. Although the adulting side of life is a little bit different, we still have a very clear intention so that we know what we want and we can communicate until we get it. Just remember that. You have been practicing your whole life to be your best presenter self. And when we think back in the first few minutes of this presentation, where I said, think about that one presenter that you absolutely love, that you're like, oh, every time they're there, I either get really inspired or emotional, or I just, I get energized. Think about that key characteristic and ask yourself, how do you employ it Do you want to employ it? How do I employ it? And a great way to get through that is some of the foundational aspects of presentation skills. And that is, how do I physically warm up my mind, my body, and myself to be able to be a good presenter? And some of the best presenters I know still have a challenge getting on stage. We all have the nerves. Okay, it happens to everybody. Sometimes we can plow through it because we know what happens. But the clammy hands, the shakes, the rattly voice, we lose our breath. That can be really hard to overcome, that physiological response to fear. So some of the things that we can do to get ourselves organized, you can do this if you're co-presenting with someone else or just to yourself, is the number one muscle, other than, you know, having your brain involved, is going to be the engine of your mouth. Okay, so I mean, from diaphragm to lips, everything needs to get warmed up. Okay, just like you have to warm up an engine in a car, it is the same thing for your presentations. When you do this, because your tongue is a muscle, so when you actually work the muscle just a little bit before doing your favorite tongue twisters. My favorite that I've used for a decade is one called red leather, yellow leather. And you can kind of say it in your head. You're like, that sounds super easy to say. I can do that. Great. So you're going to start slow. Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. And now you're going to speed it up. And you have to go as fast as you can while you can actually say it. Okay. Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, and try to just keep doing it until you don't get tongue-tied. I've used that with executives. I've used that with kids. It is something that can work for you. Anything that's just to really go from the back of your palate to the tip of your tongue. The next time, see, it's not as easy as it sounds. I know. I always say just try it and see how it goes. Another, like any of your favorite tongue twisters can help, okay? Another thing to really help wake up your diaphragm and wake up the range of your voice. Women sometimes tend to, when we're presenting, we tend to go a little bit higher in our voices naturally. But one of the things that you can do is a sound exercise. So do not do this in front of your kids because they're just going to continue to do this forever. But you're going to go as high as you can with your voice and then drop it down kind of like a roller coaster. So I'll do it because no kids are around. So it goes like, how? And it looks crazy, sounds crazy. I guarantee you it's a fun thing you can do in your car on the way to a presentation. People will look at you and go, something's happening to her. But it actually does wake up your range so that when you are presenting, we avoid the monotone, because no one likes to listen to the monotone because we've heard it and we don't like it. Okay, so do yourself a favor, try to jazz up your own presentations. You can also just do some humming in the morning to get your vocal cords warmed up. But I highly implore you to try doing some of these tongue twisters, because when you are, especially if you're reading something out loud, or you're just in the middle of kind of an off-the-cuff presentation, or even in your scripted writing, it will help you avoid getting that tongue-tied when you really don't want to, okay? Because sometimes when we do get tongue-tied, then we forget our lines, and then the baggage comes back in and all this stuff, okay? So we want to make sure that we're able to address some of those things. And there's a few good TED Talks that are on this and how to make sure that we're presenting ourselves in the best possible way. So in closing remarks, utilizing these exercises, utilizing these techniques, finding your rituals and your routines before your presentation. It could be something as simple as shaking out your body, of loosening up your voice, of saying some of your tongue twisters, of internalizing your affirmations, of being aware and understanding the importance of visualizing your fear monster in a box away from you, and understanding the value of putting all of that stuff in our baggage and keeping that outside so it doesn't seep in, and clicking into our positive internal mantra. Understanding that your audience wants you to succeed. Being empowered, being confident, power posing like Amy Cuddy does, the sociopsychologist. I know a lot of us on the call have power posed in the past for 30 seconds. Increase those dopamine levels. It increases your adrenaline. Be the steward of your success, because you have a story to tell, whether it's sales numbers, whether it's a passion project. You have the ability to be the best storyteller you can be based off of your experiences so far. So I highly encourage you to continue your professional development. Feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. I do facilitations as well from an employee perspective in regards to coaching business leaders as well. I'm always here for you to help you develop your skills and techniques. And I absolutely thank you for spending some time with us in your busy schedules to do some of this kind of self-awareness and learning today. And I'm just so thrilled. And thank you to the Brandon, Manitoba Chamber of Commerce and Aaron and everybody out there for being on our call today. So I'll leave the questions open on Slido. If anything does actually come up, you can ask me questions over the next 24 hours as well, and I'll be happy to answer those, or feel free to email me and we can go from there. But just want to say thank you everyone again, and stay positive and stay healthy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chloe. We did have one question come in the chat here. And it's just, who is one of the public speakers that you admire most?
That is an excellent question. And for me, it's actually Barack Obama, for a very specific reason. I'm not going to get into socioeconomic policies with anybody today, but he has the ability to channel the balance between the William Shatner pauses and what I would consider my presentation style. And he just has this ability. He always does this very specific kind of hand gesture that I thought was always brilliant, because it's not pointing and it's not doing one of the waves or like the cupping feature. But I just thought that his cadence was very unique, and people tended to tune into that and listen and say, okay, well, what's actually happening here? So for me, it would definitely be, he's been an inspiration for me from a public speaking perspective.
Yeah. He definitely does take those pauses, doesn't he? Yeah. And I know exactly what you mean about the hand thing he does. Yeah, Spencer's got it too.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much. That was absolutely fabulous. I haven't had a ton of opportunity to do public speaking, but I mean, it is something that I enjoy. So I have like my little pages of notes that I definitely took away from this. And I think one of my favorite things from this is one of the first things you talked about is the fear monster, and just shrinking it, just putting that away and actually visualizing that. So yeah, thank you, because we know you're just as busy, if not busier, than myself or everyone on the call here. So thank you for taking the time and speaking to us today.
Absolutely, with pleasure. And please, anybody on the call, feel free to reach out. Just so thrilled. And Aaron, I'm glad you got some good takeaways, and just want to wish everybody a fantastic day. And you actually get 3 minutes back in your day. So thank you again. I look forward to speaking with you all soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.